This edition of MacVoices is supported by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro. PDF editing for your Mac, iPhone, and iPad. Learn more at smilesoftware.com. Welcome back to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we haven't talked to anyone from Synology for a while, and we definitely haven't talked to Kyle for a while, but Kyle Foster is here to talk about the brand new models of Synology NAS, which are network attached storage, that they have just announced. Kyle, good to see you again. How are things going?
Pretty good, yeah. I think the last time we saw each other was in Vegas for CES, and don't think we'll be making a repeat of that this year.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny. That seems like years ago, and it was only, 5-6 months.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what will happen next year, but we're all going to have to wait and see. But I gather that you are doing the new normal thing and working from home.
Absolutely, yeah. We started working from home back in March. Been here ever since. It's been an interesting time, but fortunately, kind of one of the things we do at Synology is we make working remotely a lot easier. So we were already, predisposed to a work from home environment anyway. So all they had to do was flip the switch, and fortunately, except for our warehouse crew, we've had very little disruption.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, we talked about Synology a little bit at CES, and of course, there the interviews are a lot more abbreviated. And I've been anxious to get back with you, and this is a perfect excuse because now you have a whole new line of Synology to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah. We just launched a couple of things, including some updates to our Plus series. The Plus series is kind of like the real heavy hitter, most value for money series. So this is going to be a pretty popular update. Some of the new ones we've got in 2 bays are the DS220 Plus, which replaces the DS218 Plus. We also just launched the DS720 Plus, which replaced the DS718 Plus. And then we got 2 new 4-bay NASs, the DS420 Plus and the DS920 Plus. And so what this kind of does is I like to look at it this way. For the power users, the creative professionals, even some small business owners, you have a 2-bay NAS and a 4-bay NAS in the form of the 220 Plus and the 420 Plus. And then for the kind of more performance-heavy tasks, the slightly larger offices, maybe you need to run a VM, a couple Docker containers. For that, you'll have the DS720 Plus and the DS920 Plus. So we kind of have a 2-bay for everybody and a 4-bay for everybody in the Plus series now, which I think is great. It gives a lot more customizability for people who are looking to upgrade their setup or just kind of getting into NAS, especially now that the whole work from home thing is setting up. But yeah, the 220 Plus and the 420 Plus, refreshed Intel processor. Those are going to be great for, all of our NAS units are great for just bulk file storage. But this is, being that it's a Plus series, will give you the ability to run our active backup software for your backing up PCs, virtual machines, other servers, things like that. And then the 720 Plus, 920 Plus, all those great features, but they just have a little bit more in terms of CPU horsepower and a little bit more in terms of RAM upgradability. And something else, too, that I think is going to be a big step for us and really, advantageous to our users is we're starting to make M.2 slots in our NAS units for SSD caching. Those are going to start to be a little bit more standardized in these units. The 920 Plus, the 720 Plus both come with those. I believe the 420 Plus does as well. So, you don't have to bother wasting a whole drive bay with an SSD anymore. You can just pop in the NVMe drives and then boom, you still have access to all the bays.
Okay, a lot of questions here I want to ask, but I want to start at first to help folks understand that unlike some companies, Synology has a logic to their model numbers. Instead of it just being alphabet soup, there is a way to decrypt it. So can you decrypt how you name your devices?
Absolutely, yeah. So DS, which you'll find in all of our desktop units, it stands for disk station, which is just us. And then the first number that you hear, so for instance, the DS420 Plus, the first number is 4. That means it's 4 bays. The second number is 20, came out in the year 2020, and then Plus denotes the series. So if it was a different, something like the DS420J, same thing, you can tell 4 bays, made in the year 2020, but it's a J series instead of the Plus series. Gets a little bit different when you get into things like the DS720 Plus or the DS920 Plus. So the DS720 Plus by default is a 2-bay unit, but it's expandable with our 5-bay expansions disk shelf, I guess. And so it has the potential to be up to 7 drives. And then again, 20 for year 2020 and then the Plus. So it's a little bit tricky once you get into units that have some expandability, but once you kind of understand how it breaks down, you'll be able to put the pieces together. Of 7 drives, it only comes with 2. Oh wait, expansion unit.
Okay, good. Thank you. That again, once you know the secrets, it's easy to understand, and it definitely helps if you're shopping. But if not, it just looks like alphabet soup.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least we're not as bad as hard drive manufacturers, though. That's the real alphabet soup.
Amen. Amen. Oh man. The other thing I wanted you to clarify, you said that you can add RAM to some of these. So first of all, why would I want to add RAM to a NAS? And second, which ones can do it, and what are the performance benefits?
Yeah, so not everybody needs extra RAM for a NAS. I mean, most NASs you'll be fine with, the standard 2 gigs it comes with or whatever. Really, the only time you're going to want to add extra RAM is if you're running some, heavy applications or some heavy things like Docker containers, some virtual machines, things that are a little bit more resource heavy. So again, for most users or someone like me, I have my NAS at home. It backs up my computers. It runs my Plex server. I really don't need all that extra RAM. But if you're in in an office situation where you're running maybe a Docker container for an automated script, or perhaps you just have a bunch of users connecting at once doing a bunch of their own little things, you're going to want that little bit of extra breathing room just to kind of keep performance up. As far as expandability for the RAM, I know that the 920 Plus can expand. I want to say up to 8 gigs, but that might be wrong. I'll have to double check that. Same with the 720 Plus, also expandable. And that's just with this new launch of units. We have other, beefier units like our DS 2419 Plus, I believe, that can expand even higher than that. And again, for most people, it's not something they necessarily need. That's why we give you a lot of options to kind of figure out, what exactly do you need? Because there's no good in paying an extra $200-300 for something you're never even really going to, access.
And if I remember correctly, you said that some of these new ones come with an expansion bay.
Absolutely, yeah. So the 720 Plus, 920 Plus, both compatible with our 5-bay expansion unit. And that's going to be great for if you're, right now, you're just starting, you only need a 720 Plus. You only need the 2 drive bays. You got 20 terabytes in there, you're golden. But say 4 or 5 years down the line, you need more space, need more storage space. You can either buy a new NAS with bigger units in, pop in the old drives into the new unit, or you can just buy the expansion unit. It's kind of up to you how you want to do it. Again, all about customizability and making sure that you're only paying for what you absolutely need.
Okay, so what I hear about, I guess what you're talking about with the new ones is they're not necessarily any new features. It's more about just updating the processors and having improved performance, like any iteration is. Or am I missing something? Are there brand new features for this?
So some of them, it's case by case. So for instance, the M.2 slots in the newer units, I don't believe those were standard in the previous models. And then also for things like the DS220 Plus, it now features dual gigabit NIC cards or NIC slots instead of just one that was on the DS218 Plus. And yeah, I believe there are a few hardware changes from model to model. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but that's all available on our website as well. But as far as the internal softwares and stuff like that, it's still running off DSM, so you can still expect if you've ever used our NAS products before, you can kind of expect a similar experience. Just obviously with the refresh CPU and things like that, it's going to be a little bit snappier.
Yeah, we can never have too much speed, right?
For sure.
The M.2 slots, talk a little bit about those and what they bring to the party.
Right. So if you are someone who is running their NAS and you have the need for SSD caching, that could be if you're trying to, do a bunch of little changes to a whole bunch of files on a consistent basis or something like that. Previously, for some units, you had the ability to set up SSD caching, where you can put in a standard 2.5-inch SSD into one of your drive bays and set it up as read or write cache. Now, instead of doing that, you can just take an NVMe drive, pop it in the NVMe slot in the bottom, set it up as a read, write cache, or both if you have two NVMe drives, and then you have access back to all the drive bays that you had originally. Again, not something that everybody needs. Most people get by just fine without SSD caching. But if that is something that you need or something that you just want to have, because like you said, speed is cool, we have plenty more options for that kind of thing now too. And hopefully, as that kind of technology and NVMe drives become more affordable, hopefully that'll be something that's a little bit more standardized across not just our NAS units, but NAS in general.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Smile, the makers of world-class software like PDFpen and PDFpen Pro. Not only are many of us working from home now, but it looks like we will be, at least part of the time, on an ongoing basis. That means even less paper than before, which in turn means more PDF documents. And that means that you need the power of PDFpen and PDFpen Pro from Smile more than ever. With PDFpen, you can not only annotate documents, but edit them, just like a word processing document, even if the author didn't intend for you to be able to. Just run them through PDFpen's built-in optical character recognition, and you have editable, searchable text to work with to fix typos, correct grammatical errors, or modify the content. And if you're working on secure documents, not only can you add a password to protect them from prying eyes, but you can also securely redact them so that something you don't want seen can't and won't be seen. That's a big, big feature because just pasting a graphic over a sentence or two doesn't redact it, it just covers it up. And what can be covered up can be uncovered. With PDFpen, it isn't just covered up, it's gone. There are so many features and capabilities of PDFpen, way too many to list here, and even more with PDFpen Pro. And let's not forget PDFpen for iPhone and iPad, which brings the power of PDF editing to your mobile Apple devices. Right now, go to smilesoftware.com/podcast and see what PDFpen and PDFpen Pro can do for you. Download a demo version and then add PDFpen to your productivity toolkit. That's smilesoftware.com/podcast to do more with your PDFs from Smile, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for their support of MacVoices.
I feel like network attached storage is becoming more popular. Not just for business. I mean, business obviously has been there one way or another, but for the home, because now we have people wanting to run, as you said, Plex servers, and that with a family, that's perfect because everybody can be watching their own movies or whatever, pulling them from the Plex server. So is it fair to say that these are all network attached and there is no direct attach option?
Right, pretty much for our NAS units, we stick to the network attached side of things. You got to connect via Ethernet, and connect over wireless too as well with our Quick Connect setup. As of now, we don't really offer much in the form of direct attached storage. We like to stick with NAS, and that's kind of what our customers like to see from us. And that's kind of what they've grown to expect at this point as well. But yeah, as a home appliance, I think it's definitely something that's going to become more popular, especially now that more people are working from home. Your laptop can only hold so much stuff. You gotta offload it at some point. Same with now that your kids are home all the time too. Who knows what they're up to, downloading, uploading, whatever. And even things like just conserving bandwidth at home. Well, maybe not bandwidth is the right term, but especially when lockdown kind of first started and everybody was at home all the time on the devices, all the internet companies were, you're going to break down the internet. You're watching too much Netflix. You can just stream it from your own little personal media server at home. That was actually one of my quarantine projects early on. Was I finally got around to digitizing my DVD collection. So my Plex server is fuller now than it's ever been. And I kind of like to think of it as hey, I'm conserving internet so that somebody else who actually has an important use can use it instead of just me watching Netflix again.
Sounds like a justification to me, Kyle.
Well, I have a girlfriend. She doesn't understand. She doesn't get that, I just like to have filled hard drives. If you get a new hard drive and it says, 97% empty, the first thing you want to do is fill it up.
Absolutely. Okay, so your girlfriend is an interesting example, because that's why I ask about the direct connect option, because I'm afraid that people hear network attached storage they associate it with the office, and it's like, oh my God, I'm not a network engineer, so this is not for me. And it's quite to the contrary. Network attached storage has become so easy to access, and there's so many benefits to it that folks, you really need to dip your toe in, and picking up one of these, especially the two-bay Synologies, is a great way to start to get your feet wet.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, network attached storage. Even for me, when I first joined Synology, it was still kind of like a what? What is that? But once you get used to it, and especially once you get used to the way Synology does things, it's really accessible, really easy to use. Synology was one of the first, if not the first, NAS providers to provide a GUI, a graphic user interface, in the form of DSM. And if you've used any computer within the past 15, 20 years, you can navigate your way through DSM. It's super easy, straightforward to set up, and it's not as hard to access or set it up as most people think. Even doing something that used to be kind of more complicated, like an S&D share on your computer, or just mounting a network drive to your computer from that server, it's two presses of a button to do. It's not, you don't have to fuss around with IP addresses and, look at the MAC address, make sure you're pointing the right thing at the right thing anymore. It's kind of like a point and click, easy to use, follow the wizard interface. And with that too, we also have the backup applications, or any of the other stuff that you find in our package center. It's, again, if you've used a computer or even an iPhone, you go to the App Store, you download the app. Same thing with Synology. You go to the package center, you download Active Backup for Business, and then you follow 2-3 clicks of a button, and boom, your entire PC is backed up and protected.
You said DSM. What is DSM?
DSM, Disk Station Manager. So that's basically the operating system of all of our NAS units. All of our NAS units run off some form of DSM or another. And once you open it up for the first time, after you create your username and password, you're taken to what looks like a computer desktop. It just lives in your internet browser. And again, very simple, easy to use. It's got the graphics, the icons on the desktop that you can press, and boom, you're taken into the package center. You're taken into the storage manager. And we've done a lot, and our software team has done a lot to make those kind of things really easy to do, really simple to understand, and kind of walk you through the process step by step. So if you're a first-time user, again, really not as intimidating as it sounds. And if you are someone who used, something like FreeNAS before or something, you might be surprised at how easy it is to do some of the stuff that you spent, messing around with all different lines of code and SSH commands and things like that.
Okay, so let's now go to some of the hardware. Well, yeah, before we leave Disk Station Manager, it's safe to say that pretty much everything that you offer will run on all of your devices. Am I correct for the most part?
For the most part, some limitations, for instance, our J-series units aren't able to run our Active Backup software suite. And I believe the J-series can't do the BTRFS file system, which is kind of like the backbone of that particular software. So for some of the more advanced backup applications, you will need to get a Plus series unit or higher. But for the most part, as far as user experience goes, it'll be almost identical from our cheapest unit to our most expensive.
And I think that's one of the real strengths that you all have, is that I get, if I learn it once, I can expand, I can change disk stations, I can do whatever, and I can leverage the learning I've already done.
Exactly, yeah. It's just like, kind of like with an iPhone. If you've had one iPhone and you get the new iPhone, there's not really a learning curve there. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk hardware for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go with a 4-bay just because it's easier to illustrate. So do I have to have the same volume, the same size hard drives to go in each of the 4 slots, or can I mix and match?
You can mix and match to your heart's content. We actually have a couple different RAID options too, depending on how many drives that you put in. We have 2 kinds of proprietary RAID. It's called Synology Hybrid RAID, and then it's Synology Hybrid RAID 2, which is going to be kind of similar to like a RAID 5. But what the advantage of that over a traditional RAID is that it allows you to take up all of the space from all of the drives that you put in there. So previously with the standard RAID, you'd be limited by the smallest capacity hard drive in the RAID. But with Synology Hybrid RAID, it does not do that. It's not limited by the smallest drive. It's literally, it takes all of the available space, RAIDs it together, and then gives you the most that it can for those whatever capacity of hard drives that you have in there. And we actually have a useful tool on our website on Synology.com. It's called the RAID calculator, and it'll allow you to put in different capacity hard drives with different RAID types, and allow you to play like, okay, if I have 4 terabytes and I put it in a RAID 5, and then I take this and I move it to SHR, whatever, it'll give you the actual amount of usable space, and it will also give you the amount that's reserved for the RAID and the parity of those drives. So if that's something too, maybe you have a couple extra hard drives lying around, you're thinking about getting an NAS, you can go ahead and pre-calculate how much space you're able to get out of those drives.
Okay, and again, we start talking about RAID, and people's eyes glaze over. RAID is just no. I don't want to use that term. That's wrong. RAID is a group of disks that can function in different ways. Sometimes it can function as just one big disk, or sometimes there can be redundancy between different disks, and this provides extra speed or extra reliability depending on which way you go. So we have 4. Let's say we have 4 2 terabyte drives in each one. So, and what happens if I have one drive go bad, and how do I protect against that?
Right, so that would again be dependent on which RAID you choose. But for instance, if you had those RAIDs set up in something like SHR1, Synology Hybrid RAID 1, it would RAID all of those disks together, basically take the data and stripe it across the different volumes so that there's a little bit of pieces, on each of the disks. And that'll allow you to have one hard drive completely break, die, blow up, catch on fire. Well, maybe not catch on fire because the other hard drives might be hurt by that too. But it'll allow that drive to completely go down, and all of the data that was stored on that drive is also safely scattered across the other drives. So say that were to happen, you have that drive go down, pop it out, pop a new one in, RAID rebuilds, and you're back like nothing happened at all.
Sorry, go ahead. Pardon me.
I was just going to say, and that's just one example. You can get more disk fault tolerances with RAID. So you can have it as many as two disks go down completely, and you're still covered, good to go. And then that's kind of one of the main advantages of NAS. The main advantages to RAID is that redundancy. A lot of people, especially these days, stacks of external hard drives lying around. That's where the data is. But if that hard drive gets corrupted, hard drives die, SSDs die. They even have a little countdown clock basically when you buy it that says, okay, you can only write this many times to this drive. It's going to happen at some point or another. That's why you need that RAID, that redundancy there. If you have important data, if you have family photos, memories that you want to keep forever, putting it on one hard drive and calling it a day is not quite good enough.
Amen. I agree with you. And this is why I think it's important for people to become more educated about some of this. Because to your point, sooner or later, your drive is going to die. It's not if it's going to die, it's when it's going to die. And so you better be prepared, because if you're just using one drive as your backup, then you're really living on borrowed time.
We'll have more with Kyle Foster in the next edition of MacVoices, talking about the Synology disk stations, not just the new ones, but the entire Synology line, the applications they can run, and what they can do for you. That's next time on MacVoices. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.